Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on driving employee performance. My name is Ann Cadwell, and I'm the Retail Sector Specialist with Garden Centers Canada, which resides under the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association. So happy to have all of you here today for this informative webinar with Neal. I met Neal last year at Cultivate. He packed every room he was in, and there was a lot of rooms, wasn't there, Neal? I think you spoke maybe 8 times there.
Something like that. They usually load me up when I go. Yeah.
Please, if you have any questions, put them down in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Neal and I will be monitoring these throughout the webinar, and the webinar will be recorded, so we will send that out afterwards. And now a little bit about Neal. Neal is a dynamic sales and leadership coach, trainer, and speaker with a proven track record of driving success. Believe it or not, he began his career at Case Snow Management, Inc. in 2010 as the account executive. With the company only had one pickup truck. Neal played a key role in growing the business to 40 million annual sales. In 2017, he transitioned to coaching, where he discovered the transformative power of strength-based leadership in achieving exceptional results. Passionate about helping others find fulfillment and success, Neal is a certified strength coach with Gallup and a John Maxwell certified coach, speaker, and trainer. He holds a dual Bachelor of Art degree in marketing and Spanish from Northern Michigan University and earned a Global Executive MBA with Schema Business School. Neal, I'll let you take it from there.
Well, thanks, Ann. I need you to introduce me every time because that was dynamic. And normally people just kind of read it monotone. So I appreciate that. I'm excited to be with you all today. Believe it or not, I put a lot of prep work into this. Ann was gracious enough to give me a list of, I don't know, a dozen or so people who are probably some of you are on the call here. And I was able to connect with a handful of them and hear a little bit about the challenges that you are facing in the industry, all around Canada, actually. And I know that this is frankly just a really challenging time for everybody, right? Not just because we're depending on where exactly you are on the threshold of spring and the spring rush, but economically, politically, and not even considering all the recent events, but just on the tail end of 5 years after the pandemic started, we are in a wildly different place. But I know you know all that. What I'm looking to do today is try and give you some really actionable tools to help you out. And what we'll do is we'll get you, of course, the recording after, but I'll also connect with Ann and we'll be able to email you some notes and the PDF of the presentation. So you'll have that. So you can feel free to share those with your team or anyone else afterwards. And I do have the chat and the Q&A open on my screen here. I'm happy to take them live. I'll also tell you that I get to present all over the world. In fact, like Ann mentioned, Cultivate's one of my favorite places, and I'd love to meet with you up at Cultivate if you'll be there this year. But if you webinars are challenging, particularly when I can't see anybody, because I'm just here in my office talking by myself. And I love the audience participation that I get when I speak live. So I'm hoping for the group of you that showed up here live, if you can help me with that, that would be help me help you. Give me your questions on the fly. And if I say something you like, you can just drop a smiley face or a thumbs up in the chat. That'll let me know that I'm making sense to you, which is good. If you're watching this on recording, sorry you don't get that opportunity, but at the end, I will have my contact information. You're more than welcome to reach out to me and happy to answer questions for you later. Or if you're here live and you want questions later, after the fact, when you start chatting with your team, happy to do that as well. Who's my ball team? My baseball team, Dax? I'm a Los Angeles Dodgers fan because I grew up in LA. So easy one. All right. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about trying to boost our team's productivity, trying to make everyone like work more and be more effective. And the concept I want to put forward for that today is something that we call employee engagement. So when I sit down with business owners and managers, and the table topic is engagement, people tell me, "Oh, Neal, this is great. We need our employees to be more engaged." And I say, I completely agree. Engagement is the thing that really makes everything at work work. And if we want to improve engagement, we should probably define it. And I'm curious, who has a definition for employee engagement? And the answers that I get back are usually involving the word engagement, right? We want our employees to engage with us. We want them to find work engaging. And I don't think it's all that helpful to define a word with the same word. So I'm going to give you a different definition of engagement. This one comes from Gallup. Gallup is the world's largest independent polling company. They spend $10 million or so every year asking people what they think about stuff, primarily in work and the workplace. And they publish those results, and they're truly global polls. And I'm sure we can find some good statistics just for Canada from Gallup if you were interested after the fact. But when it comes to engagement, Gallup defines engagement as employees who are involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work and their workplace. So employee engagement is the extent to which an employee is involved in, enthusiastic about, and committed to the work and the workplace. And what I'm going to propose to you today is that the more engaged our employees are, the more involved, the more enthusiastic, and the more committed they are, the more productive they are, the happier they are, the lower the turnover rate, or the higher the retention rate we get. And generally everything that we want at work, everything that we're trying to do more of with less people and resources, is a function of the extent to which our employees are engaged. And I don't care if your employees are full-time year-round people, if you're talking about senior managers, or you're talking about seasonal workers, foreign workers, if you're talking about part-time college kids. We want to try and give you tools today for whatever level you're at, whatever group or all the groups of employees you have, as a way to increase engagement. That's the framework we want to work with. Now, we have three types of employees, or three big buckets that we could put employees into. We have employees who we would consider engaged. You're probably one of them, right? You're taking time out on this random morning from wherever you are and whatever work you have, because you're probably loyal and psychologically committed to your organization. Maybe because you own it, maybe because you've been there a long time, but whatever the reason is, you are an engaged worker. You're involved, you're committed, and you're enthusiastic about your work and the work your company does. As a result, you and the people like you are way more productive and way more likely to stay with your company than other employees. Now, the second bucket we have is probably your average employee, or not you specifically, but the average employee in companies around the world is what we would call not engaged. So these workers are fine. They're fine with their job, but they don't love it. They like what they do, but maybe it's just a job. They're not psychologically committed. Maybe you have an employee like I used to have, or actually I still employ on one of my businesses, who is like a stay-at-home mom. And she works sometimes for you, and she generally likes what she works, but her family and her kids come first, and work is a far second distant. And so maybe they miss a work day, maybe not. Generally, they show up on time and they're good, but they're not going to go above and beyond. They have some really clear boundaries for their work and their life, and that's likely to consist. And if we can't get them engaged, then they're more likely to leave than an engaged employee. And then we have a small bucket of employees that we would call actively disengaged. These people show up for work physically, but that's about it. Maybe they're straight up toxic employees. They're deeply unhappy with their work, possibly their life, and they want to share that with anybody. When someone comes to your garden center to apply, or if you're a contractor, to your shop to apply, then these employees might actually pull you to the side, pull that new recruit to the side and say, hey, man, you really don't want to work here. And we desperately need to find these employees a new home. Now, usually when I talk with managers, they start to think about all their actively disengaged employees and worry that they're dramatically different. But in fact, average kind of looks like this, and this is by generation. So traditionalists have more or less left the workplace. Baby boomers, we know, Gen Xers, that middle generation, the millennials, the younger workers, and we're starting to see Gen Z in the workplace now. But generally, about 1 in 3 workers is engaged. Generally, 10 to 15% of workers is actively disengaged. And really what I think the big concern is, only about 55% of workers fall into this category that's not engaged. And as managers, as leaders, we need to find a way to take all these employees who are not engaged and get them engaged. The actively disengaged, they'll probably leave soon. Maybe we can help them do that a little bit quicker. But really the problem is the employees who are not engaged. It is just a anchor on our team's productivity, on the economy at large, and a real problem. And engagement is actually globally at a 10-year low right now. So we can do a lot better. Our former generations that came before us, they had higher engagement. Now, how much does engagement matter? Well, Gallup has a tool to measure engagement. We call it the Q12, and it's called that because it has 12 questions. So, really smart organization, not the most creative when it comes to naming. When we look at the companies in the top 25% of Q12 scores compared to those in the bottom, then we see that those firms, those teams, have 23% higher profitability, 18% higher productivity, 64% less safety incidences, which is an interesting finding. Anybody have a guess as to why employees who are more involved, enthusiastic, and committed to their work and their workplace are safer in the workplace? I'll take your guesses in the chat. We can talk about that. These employees these teams realize 43% less turnover. So people are leaving less often. Their quality is higher. There's 81% less absenteeism. Absenteeism is that super annoying thing where your employee didn't show up today and they didn't bother to let you know. And they have 66% higher well-being, which is a really amazing quality of life finding that you all probably enjoy because you're super nice Canadians and you care about people. But it's this wonderful byproduct of trying to pursue productivity. Focused on the work and not distracted. That is accurate. We could get more specific. Assuming there are good, clear processes in place to help people safe. I think that that's not really what is changing here, right? Because we have those anyway. If you're safe at work, you can continue to work uninterrupted. That sort of implies that people are getting hurt so they're more productive or something along those lines. It's not really that. I like this answer, Michelle, of focus on the work and not distracted, but it's even deeper than that, right? So we tend to think that it's this like conscious decision, but really what we observe is that it's an unconscious thought process byproduct. So we're going to talk about how to boost engagement with things we can do as leaders, but really we're trying to make work more intuitive. We're trying to help people work better and enter maybe what we call flow state. When people are working and it's not clear what to do, they're trying to work outside their strengths. They're trying to work outside their talents. They're usually not working that well. And as a result, they're preoccupied with when their boss might yell at them next, when they can go look for another job, maybe about their bills at home because they're not earning that much. When we can take care of all that stuff, all that psychological safety, when we can really help them be effective, then we free up unconscious brain power, brain width to focus on their actual physical surroundings. And we see that they're safer, which is fascinating. So how are we going to boost engagement? Well, as leaders, as managers, there are 6 shifts in thinking that we're going to embark on to help us lead better, to help us get a more engaged workforce at every level. So these are the 6 things. I'm going to walk you through them step by step. In the past, we used to focus on pay or people's paychecks. Now we're going to talk about purpose. Before, we used to care about employee satisfaction. I don't care how satisfied employees are, and I'll tell you why. We're going to focus on their development. We're no longer going to consider ourselves bosses. We're going to think of ourselves as coaches. Rather than having annual reviews, we're going to start having more ongoing conversations. And instead of focusing on weaknesses, we're going to focus on strengths. And finally, instead of talking about people's jobs, we're going to talk about their life. So I'm going to run through these 6, each one in detail, talk about the shift in thinking. Then I want to go a little bit deeper on strengths. And then I'll give you a model for coaching. All right. We're going to go kind of quick, but we're recording it. We'll get you everything. If you have questions along the way, just let me know. So shift number 1, paycheck to purpose. Work must have meaning. For every single employee at every single level, work must have meaning. It's non-negotiable today. For older generations, for our parents, for our grandparents, their mission and purpose was like 100% their families and their communities. They would say, I'm grateful for my job. I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to provide for my family, even if I don't really care what I do or what my company does, or if my boss is kind of a jerk. Also, 75 years ago, 50 years ago, pensions were a thing. So this was sort of a reciprocal, you work for me, we'll take care of you for life. That's all gone away for the most part, minus a few sectors or hold on companies. Today, for younger workers, they are putting off families. We are not engaged in our physical communities the same way. We're engaged in digital communities. We have put off a house and kids and marriage in a societal shift. And as a result, work becomes the most important thing. Now, compensation's fair, depending on where you live, depending on your employees' life choices. I don't know what a fair living wage is, but we have to pay them enough to survive. If somebody's not making enough to survive or even thrive financially, then they'll probably go find another job. But beyond that, we don't really get much more out of pay in terms of engagement. So does anybody remember this Microsoft Encarta? Drop me a thumbs up or a smiley face if you remember Microsoft Encarta. When I was in like elementary school, middle school, we had to use Microsoft Encarta for research. It was launched in 1993. It was from Microsoft. It was a CD-ROM encyclopedia that came with your desktop computer. And what Microsoft did, particularly Microsoft in the 90s, they had all the money, right? Huge, number one company in IT and tech. And so Microsoft they licensed all of the best content. They went to the best encyclopedias and they licensed the very best information they could get. And in total, they had about 62,000 articles. I agree, Michael. It was amazing. But then, to Michael and my demise, they shut it down in December 2009. Right? Microsoft, with all the money in the world, all the best information, all the articles that they could afford, they had to shut down their encyclopedia in 2009. Does anybody know why? What replaced Microsoft Encarta? What do you actually know of when you think of electronic encyclopedia now? Yes, Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia launched in 2001. They promote an openly edible content and neutral point of view. And back in 2001, they told 3.1 million articles. Today, they actually have way more than 5.7 million articles. I think more than 10 million articles. It's officially the largest encyclopedia ever in human history. Also, how much do you have to pay to use Wikipedia? Nothing, right? How much do you get paid if you contribute to Wikipedia? Nothing. Wikipedia, with basically almost no money, they have a little bit of costs, or a few admins and a few servers, but with essentially no dollars, dethroned the king of software, Microsoft. How did they do it? How did they not only force them to shut down their product, they beat them out by a factor of 100 in terms of information. And by the way, according to independent people, accuracy also, despite what my high school teachers told me, right? How did they do that? Well, they did it by engaging on purpose. So when I was putting together this case study, of course, on Wikipedia, this thing popped up and it said, "Hey, Neal, thanks for reading. We need money to support like servers and stuff, and we were asking you for $3." And I was about to close it, like I usually do, when I read this line: Wikipedia unites all of us who love knowledge, contributors, readers, and the donors who keep us thriving. The heart and soul of Wikipedia is a community of people working to bring you unlimited access to reliable, neutral information. They played for purpose. And I was sitting in a Starbucks when I did this and decided, you know what? I will give you $3. It is worth it because purpose is more important than paycheck. When I worked at the snow company, we had to recruit every year about 1,000 people to go do snow shoveling. And we were paying $15 an hour, which was quite low, even though it was almost 10 years ago. Back then, most of my friends and competitors who own snow companies were paying $25 or $30 an hour. They tended to pay cash. We were only on the books. But I always was able to fill my roster of shovelers and get them to work. And the way that I did it was by working on purpose. So when someone would come in and I get to meet them and they would hear about this opportunity, I would say, listen, if you're going to snow shovel with us, here's what you have to understand. This work is really hard. And we're going to shovel all night long, and you may end up at a pharmacy. And the reason why we're going to work as hard as we can, even though it's cold, is so that people like our grandparents can get inside and get the medication that they need, even though it's snowing out. Like if you sign on for this job, you have to understand that you may end up at a grocery store. And the reason why we're going to just keep shoveling the same sidewalk over and over and over again through the entire snowstorm is so that everyone in our community can get inside and buy groceries and feed their family despite the weather. Like you might end up working at one of our electric or gas suppliers. And if you go there, you're going to have to shovel around every single piece of equipment that they have. And the reason why we're going to do all this work that doesn't seem to be that important is so that when the power goes out, their crews can respond quickly and get heat and electricity back to people's homes so they don't die in their house. Like you may end up shoveling at the train station that takes everybody into Boston. And the reason why we're going to stay on that platform all night in the cold, despite the worst blizzards in New England weather history, is so that those people can go into the city and continue to work and provide for their families. And we're actually so big that if we all just sit at home and don't do our jobs, society as we know it in New England could cease to function. What you do is super important. And we pay $15 an hour. And I got people to sign on in droves to do that work. And don't worry, we took that extra money that we weren't paying compared to market rate, and we bought them gloves and hats and boots and pizza and hotel rooms and kept them sustained and safe. But we were able to make it work because we played for purpose rather than paycheck. It's amazing. And one of the reasons I love working with the green industry is you have the same opportunity. We're employing people who are otherwise unemployable. We're providing for the planet in a sustainable way. We're creating and selling a product that and a service that increases the health outcomes. I mean, I assume what I know, which is like Harvard Public School of Health talks about the fact that people who are out and around trees have better health outcomes and longer life expectancy just by being in nature. It's super important. In a world today where we're often not outside enough, what we do is critical for people and the planet and economically. But your people, your frontline workers, probably rarely, if ever, hear that message. We need to do better as leaders. Only 1 in 3 employees strongly agree that the mission or purpose of their organization makes them feel like their job is important. Only 1 in 4 say they've heard someone talk about how their work connects to the mission. And only about 34% have heard a story about how their company impacted a customer to improve their life or business. We got to share that message of purpose and why what we do is so important more. And purpose drives retention. So 71% of millennials who strongly agree that they know what their organization stands for and what makes it different from their competitors say they plan to stay with their company for at least a year, compared with those that don't, and the number is less than 50%. We can dramatically improve retention and performance through purpose, but we have to keep moving. So let's talk less about satisfaction and more about development. Things like ping pong tables, latte machines, free food, Christmas parties, pizza parties, they don't really matter. I think that those are like entitlements. That's a mistake and kind of condescending. And if people are asking for that stuff, it's really more of a cry for attention, in my opinion. By the way, none of this is my idea or new theories. This stuff has been around for a very long time. This is the psychologist Frederick Herzberg. He kind of pioneered worker motivation all the way back in a 1964 study. And in that study, what they concluded was there are two sets of factors. They call it a two-factor theory. And so we have what we call hygiene factors. They're called hygiene factors because if we don't take care of our hygiene, then we stink, right? And so employee satisfaction is sort of the bare minimum. It's the table stakes required to pay. And factors like job security, salary, working conditions, good pay, insurance, vacations. These are factors that we have to have or we're a stinky employer. If we don't have them or we take them away, then people get extremely upset. They contribute to dissatisfaction. But importantly, adding them never increases satisfaction or motivation. Adding them never increases satisfaction. So we have to have them to an extent. In fact, they're so basic that many of them are laws. But there's a whole separate set of factors that does increase motivation. That's challenging work, recognition, responsibility, meaningful work, which we just talked about, decision-making ability, sense of importance, and personal growth. These factors always lead to increased motivation. So what can we do? Find a way to develop employees. Rather than worry about making them completely happy or satisfied with their job, let's focus on the development. How can we teach our people more about plants? How can we get them more knowledgeable about technology? How can we increase their competencies with systems and teamwork? Are there events like this webinar that you can bring them to? If they're interested, can you bring them to Cultivate or to one of your local retreats or trade shows? Can you have morning lunch and learns or just information sharing and help them on developmental path to take them from part-time frontline worker to manager to leader? Because if we do, we start to see increased motivation. Only 50% of employees strongly agree that they had opportunities to learn and grow within the past year. Most shockingly, only 1 in 3 employees strongly agree that their most recent learning opportunity at work was well worth their time. So please, I'm begging you, do not just sign your employees up for my sessions at Cultivate. Make sure that they actually want to go and it's supportive of their goals. But most importantly, let's do better than 40% of employees strongly agree that they learned something new within the last 30 days. 93% of the time that millennials or young workers changed roles, they also left their company. We shouldn't have that. We should have a growth path for them. All right, shifting from boss to coach to keep moving. The old style of command and control of work or leadership is totally dead. And people want to be valued as both people and employees. So who they are as well as the role that they do. And we need to help them build and understand on their strengths. So a coach's role is to take someone from their natural way of being, that would be their natural way of thinking, feeling, and behaving, and translate it into a strength. A strength we define at Gallup as the ability to consistently provide near perfect performance, which is the bar that I set when I'm coaching somebody. So we want to figure out who they are and translate it into doing. Unfortunately, most workers are not getting feedback regularly. Only 1 in 5 say they get routine feedback, and only 17% say it's meaningful. So feedback is missing. Now, if you've never coached, I'll tell you it's rewarding. I get to coach every single day. I coach salespeople on a fractional basis. I coach leaders as an executive coach. It's one of my favorite things to do in the whole world. And part of the reason why is it's super rewarding. And I don't want you to take my word for it. I think you'll hear that from any coach. But one of the coaches who I want to share that from is Jim Whittaker. Jim Whittaker is a world-renowned mountain climber. He was the first American to ever climb Mount Everest. He's also formerly the CEO of REI and chairman of the board of Magellan Navigation. And I was listening to an interview that he gave, and the interviewer asked Jim, "What is your greatest accomplishment as a climber?" This world-renowned climber said, "My greatest accomplishment in climbing is that I've helped more people get to the top of Mount Everest than any other person. Taking people to the top who could never get there without my assistance is my greatest accomplishment." This is the joy of coaching that we all have the opportunity to participate in should we choose to. Coaching does not have to be super specialized. I'm going to give you a model for it and some great questions to ask. Doesn't have to be ultra formal. Doesn't have to be this huge endeavor. You can coach the people around you right away. And I'm telling you, it's so rewarding. When I was in sales, my biggest sale ever was a piece of paper that was worth more than $5 million to the company I was working for a year, which was incredible. Just huge, bigger sale than most salespeople will ever even have an opportunity to do. Last December, just a few months ago, I got word from one of the sales guys that I was coaching fractionally that he made his biggest sale ever. It was a $480,000 design build project. That hearing him talk about the fact that he made the biggest sale ever and letting me know that I had a part to play in that and help him realize his potential is more meaningful to me than what I accomplished in my own career. I think that this is the opportunity we have and the encouragement I'll give you to try coaching out, even though it's going to be difficult and awkward, is that it's more rewarding than anything you can accomplish by yourself. When I'm coaching employees, when I'm coaching anybody at work, I'm really dead set on getting past just their role. So Gallup has rolled out these 5 elements of well-being, and I think as coaches, we need to coach on all of them. These well-being elements are interrelated and interdependent, meaning that they don't exist in a vacuum. That's why I like them on this wheel. So normally when we talk about employee performance, we're talking about career, liking what you do every day and being motivated to achieve your goals. More specifically, managers tend to talk about their role, but I think they're aligned. But there are 4 other elements of human well-being that we need to be talking about. Social well-being, having supportive relationships and love in your life. People are more lonely today than they ever have been. Public health officials are talking about loneliness as an epidemic, and I think it's true. We need to talk about financial well-being, managing your economic life to reduce stress and increase security. When your employees are asking you for $1 an hour or $2 an hour or $5 an hour raise, you and I both know that that's not going to change their life the way that a balanced budget would. And financial literacy. Community well-being, liking where you live, feeling safe and having pride in your community. And I'm pretty gonna die on the hill that this is your physical community in which you live, because I think that proximity matters. And then physical well-being, having good health and enough energy to get things done daily. These are interdependent and interrelated. If people are suffering in one of the 4 areas outside of career, their career will also suffer. When I went through a divorce, my career performance suffered. When I was graduated college and was completely broke and couldn't make rent. My career suffered. When I don't feel well physically, I don't perform well at the job. These are all interdependent and interrelated. And so as coaches, we need to ask people about all of them. And if I have HR friends on the phone or on the call right now, if you can just give me some earmuffs for a second, forget what HR tells you about. You can't talk about this stuff. All I do with my people is just slide this over to them and I say, hey, Gallup says these 5 areas of well-being are really important. I'm concerned with you as a person first. Which of these 5 areas should we talk about, if any? And you can let them volunteer what they're comfortable with. There is a trust building process, but I think it's almost impossible to coach someone to really, really high levels of success in their career without focusing on those other areas of well-being. 72% of young workers who strongly agree that their manager helps them set performance goals are engaged. More than twice as many than the average company of workers are engaged when their manager helps them set performance goals, because goal setting has to be collaborative. Has to be collaborative. All right. Next point, shifting from annual reviews to ongoing conversations. Quick question, show me in the chat, who does annual reviews at work where you go through everybody's performance? Modern communication is real-time and continuous, right? Yes, Ken. Awesome. Thank you. We are texting people constantly. We're involved in multiple ongoing asynchronous conversations all the time. And we need to adjust our style to match, right? So look, annual reviews are just straight up ineffective. I'll show you why. First of all, the majority of reviews or formal performance reviews are being given once a year or less. 74% of workers are only being told how they're doing every 12 months or longer. I'm a proponent of weekly, or at the very least monthly, but that's less than 5% of workers getting formal feedback on how they're doing. Here's why performance reviews don't work. Like, deep down, we all know that a 1-hour conversation can't possibly influence behavior for a full year. I was getting made fun of for being in Boston and having the Bruins here, right? But like, regardless of your favorite hockey team, in between every period, what happens? The whole team and the coaches go into the locker room. You think they just sit around and drink Gatorade? No. They're mapping out the whole game. They're talking about what's working, what doesn't, where they need to improve. Right? Tighten up that wing. Let's get tighter on these changes. Every shift, Joel says, right? Nobody just sits there and takes notes and say, we're going to talk about this in the off season. It'd be crazy. It'd be crazy. Why aren't we doing that at work? The game is going right now. We can still impact this. And by the way, most annual reviews involve the annual pay discussion, and having that pay discussion alongside the review automatically limits its effectiveness. Automatically limits effectiveness. And employees don't think that performance reviews are fair. Now, when I was at the snow company, we at some point decided that we were big enough, we were mature enough that we should be a real company and do annual performance reviews, right? And the way that it was decided that ours would work was we would have, I don't know, 15 or 20 items to rank ourselves on. And they would be things like attendance, teamwork, appearance, whatever they were, right? All the factors that employers think are important. And we would have a 1 to 5 rating scale for each of these factors. So 1 was consistently fails to meet expectations. 3 was meets expectations. 5 was consistently exceeds expectations. And the way it worked is I'd have to rate myself 1 through 5 on each of these items. And then my boss would also rate me 1 through 5 on each of these items. Now, I was a good employee. I was an engaged employee. I worked really hard. I had a lot of success. And so when I was going through this review, most of the time I was looking at an item and I would see something like attendance, and boy, did I work. I worked 60, 70 hours a week back then. And I would look at this and say, there's no way I can do any better. This is a five. And I was generally a really good um, sole contributor, individual contributor. So I would rank like job performance at like a five. But then teamwork, I'd give myself a one because I knew everybody hated working with me and I really didn't enjoy working with them either. Right. So teamwork was a one, that was a given. But then most of them I'd look at and be like, well, I do more than meet expectations, but five sounds kind of cocky. So I'm going to put down a four. And that was sort of my mindset for these things. And then I would go sit down with my boss, and Jay would say, Neal, what'd you rate yourself? I'd tell him, and I'd say, overall it's a 4.4. And Jay would be like, cool. I agree with most of what you said. I actually had you at a 4.6 overall. And so I'm thinking, hey, this is going great. And then Jay would say, so next year, here's what we're going to pay you. And I would think, well, okay, my numbers were pretty much just made up. So where'd you get yours? Because they really seem to matter, right? Your number dictates my pay. And the rest of the 45 minutes, I was pretty distracted by that thought rather than actually listening to what he was trying to do. So pay and performance together don't work. Employees don't think they're fair. In fact, only 29% of employees think that they're fair. I think most of us who do annual reviews or get the idea are trying to inspire people to perform. Only 14% of employees strongly agree that their performance reviews inspire them to improve. So if your goal is to inspire your employees to improve with annual reviews, you're probably wasting 86% of your time and effort. And also, annual reviews are a ton of work. So I think it's easier just to drop them entirely. Now, you can have an annual pay meeting where you go through that, but maybe you work at a small company, maybe you work for a family company, and you've never been through an annual review yourself. You just thought they were a good idea. And I understand the world's full of common wisdom that's not so wise. If you've never been through an annual review yourself, let me share with you what Gallup has summarized. For employees, annual performance reviews are like walking into the unknown, sitting down for a long meeting with a manager they may not have talked to in a while, trying to remember what goals they set months ago, defending mistakes they can't fix, and frankly, just trying to figure out how to bring up pay in a way that isn't too awkward. Definitely not efficient when we put it that way. So let's be like a sports coach. Let's, in between every single performance period, whether that's daily or weekly, certainly no longer than monthly, let people know how they're doing and how we're going to adjust. Once a year, we can get together and talk about how they performed, their attitudes, and how we're going to adjust pay, but we're going to get rid of annual reviews. What extent do you recommend documenting these frequent reviews? No, I don't think that these reviews need to be formally documented. It's really a continuous dialogue is enough. So documentation tends to be reserved for what at least a lot of companies would call a performance improvement plan or a PIP. That's a way to defend yourself if you're trying to fire them, right? I'm for like positive intent. We're trying to help the employee. What would we need to document? I mean, we can talk about goals, we can track our progress and performance, but not like a HR note. What I would be is like, hey, Ken, last week we talked about doing this. Did you do it? How can I help? Right? We don't need to like document all those misses unless I'm trying to get you out of the company and defend myself. So when I coach salespeople, my typical experience as a consultant is somebody says, Neal, I've got 3 or 4 salespeople. Some are great. Some have glimpses of excellence. Some need some help, and we can't afford a sales manager. Can you coach them? I say, absolutely. I'm going to sit down every week. We're going to review their performance. They're going to have my cell phone. I expect them to call me and text me and email me throughout the week. We're going to have a continuous dialogue, and everything we talk about is going to be entirely confidential. I'll let you know or I'll let them know if they should bring something up to you. And there's no documentation at all. And it's just very much I'm in their corner, helping them out, helping them perform. If we think that somebody needs to go, my approach is different than most. If somebody needs to be fired, I tend to blame the employer or the person who hired them for not doing the right stuff or coaching them the right way. And so I just say, hey, why don't you just pay them a big enough severance where they're happy with it? Other people, want to document it all, fire them, try and defend against unemployment or lawsuits. That's where you need documentation. Again, apologies to my HR friends. I love you, but we got to get away from an administrative function and get back to a people performance function, right? Great question. All right, next shift: weaknesses to strengths. Weaknesses can never become strengths, but strengths can develop infinitely. So we don't ignore weaknesses, we just minimize them by maximizing our strengths and working around them. So I want to take a little bit of a detour here and go kind of deep on this. And if you can, now would be a great time to grab a piece of paper. I should have told you earlier. And in fact, I don't have one handy either. But grab a piece of paper and a pen. We'll do a little exercise together while I tell you about strengths. So here's what Gallup has found. Gallup has found that teams which focus on their strengths have 6.9% higher customer engagement, 15% higher employee engagement, 29.4% higher profit, 19.3% higher sales. They're safer, they turn over less, but only 1 in 5 employees feel like their strengths are used every day. Only 1 in 5 employees feel like their strengths are being used every day, which is just got to be the biggest failure of leadership I think I've ever heard. Because our job as leaders is to help people identify and build on their strengths. And these people are 3 times as likely to report an excellent quality of life if they're using them daily, which is amazing. So what are strengths? Well, strengths are talents that are developed. I think I told you this already, right? So talents explain why we're better at some things than others. They describe us, they're positive, strategic, encouraging. They influence our choices, where we live and what we like to do. And understanding our talents and strengths helps you understand yourself more fully, as well as those with whom you live and work. And we're going to do a little exercise. I say stand up, but maybe you can just give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up if you push the elevator button over and over again to remind it that you're there. Trying to watch the chat. Anybody got those? Just me? I can't be the only person. You push the elevator button over and over to remind it that you're there. And maybe you were in the session at Cultivate where I shared this, and then right after I went back to the elevators in the hotel and I was like, this is so stupid, Neal. Why would you do this? I'm going to stop doing that. And so I ignored my instinct to push that elevator button, and because it was lit up. And as I stood there and waited for the elevator to come, more and more people kept showing up, and we were all waiting together because they saw me waiting. And finally, I couldn't take it anymore, and I pressed the button, and it turned from white to red. And I thought, oh my God, it had never been pushed, but it was illuminated already, and I thought it was. And I thought, I'm never denying my instinct to remind the elevator there that I'm there again. All right, thumbs up if you have trouble saying no, even when you have too much on your plate. Those who lead with responsibility, those who come through for everybody. Yep, some of us. How about if you have a desire to know more, read, collect, and save information and share what you know? Collectively, we would call you learners, perhaps. Who has a color-coded or otherwise organized closet? I do not. I need a red X emoji for this one myself because mine is brutal. If you pick someone to race with when driving, people who are really competitive, where everything's a competition, not just Monopoly. If you truly love the experience or process of learning, or my fellow achievers who make a to-do list even on the weekends. And all of us achievers will tell you that if you make a to-do list and then you do something that's not on your to-do list, right? Then Lexi, we go in and we write that thing that we just did on our to-do list to cross it off our to-do list. Yes, exactly. These are clues to talent. These are recurring patterns of thought, feeling, or behavior that could be productively applied. I also love lists. Now, in Gallup world, we call these Clifton strengths. That is the name of the options, the taxonomy of human potential, of human talent, and we have an assessment for this. Maybe some of you have taken it. If not, I'm happy to help you take it, or you can just go directly to Gallup.com. But anyway, let me tell you about the history of Clifton strengths and the strengths movement in general. In fact, and if you haven't yet, grab your piece of paper and pen. Now's a great time to do it. So way back in 1950 in Nebraska, there was this group called the School Study Council. They were kind of like an education department. They were charged with helping making sure that kids in school learned. And in the 1950, speed reading was also this fad that everybody was kind of obsessed with. And so the Nebraska School Study Council said, hey, we want to figure out if there's a great way to teach 10th graders how to speed read. And so they did what we all do when we want to figure out if there's something good. We run an experiment, right? So they took these 6,000 10th graders and they measured how fast they could read. And then they put them through various different courses or methods of teaching speed reading. And then they measured how they improved at the end. And what they found was that no technique was better than another. So it didn't really matter how we tried to improve ourselves. Everybody investment in a behavior yielded results. And in fact, every single person improved. Every single person improved. No matter how bad or how good, when they invested in themselves, they improved. But most importantly, those with a natural talent excelled. And that's what we're going to try and capitalize on here. So we could look at these 6,000 10th graders and divide them into two groups. Average readers and above average readers. Average readers could read 90 words per minute the first time. And then they took they took this course, this method of teaching speed reading, and on average they came out reading 150 words per minute, which is kind of amazing improvement, right? But then we had this group of 10th graders who were just super talented, natural speed readers. They had this natural talent for it. And before they even took a course, they could read 350 words per minute. Anybody guess how many words per minute they could read after they took the course? It was the same course as the average readers. And I already told you everybody improved. So you know it's more than 351. Average readers went from 90 to 150. Above average readers went from 350 to what? I'll take your guesses in the chat. 700. It's a good guess. It's higher. 500, 600 are not as good guesses because it's higher than 700. 900, it's higher. 850. The answer is 2,900 words per minute. And maybe you just let out an audible gasp or something more vulgar, right? But the researchers on this project had the same response. They're like, how in the world is this possible? What is going on here? Well, this guy, Don Clifton, who was a researcher there, asked the question more articulately. He looked at this and he said, what would happen if if we think about what's right with people, rather than fixating on what's wrong with them? And this completely turns on its head traditional performance management. So talent is this naturally recurring thought, of pattern, feeling, behavior that can be productively applied, like effortlessly and instinctively starting conversations, thinking in an orderly or timely manner, being able to easily influence others, seeing patterns of data, or consistently having a positive outlook on life. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little exercise here. If you can, take a piece of paper like this and just, try and figure this out. Take your piece of paper and draw a line right down the middle for me so that you have a right-hand column and a left-hand column. And what I want you to do in a second is you have the sentence on the screen. I use my strengths every day. I want you to write that as many times as you can on one column. You can use either the right-hand column or the left-hand column. It's your choice. For 30 seconds, you're going to write as many times as I can. I use my strengths every day. Ready, set, go. I use my strengths every day. 30 seconds to do it. 25 seconds. You're using either your right hand column or your left hand column, but not both. I use my strengths every day. 15 seconds to go. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pens down. Tell me in the chat, how many did you get? Usually people are like 3, 4, 4, 6. 6. Holy smokes. All right. 5, 4.5. Got to get specific. That's cool. 5. Okay. I'm going to give you a second chance. This time, I want you to use the other column. Also, I'd like for you to please use your other hand. Using your non-dominant hand. Ready, set, go. I use my strengths every day. If you thought you couldn't read it the first time, Jensen, I can't wait for the second time. 20 seconds. 15 seconds. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Anita gave up. If you didn't give up, how many did you get? Second time. 2, 1, 1.5. Definitely no more sixes. All right. And tell me qualitatively, how was that experience? Frustrating, humorous, not fun, hard, discouraging, laughable, rushed. Yep. Humbling. Okay. What if I told you for the next 2 weeks, every day, I'd like for you to take about 15 minutes at night, practice writing the sentence with your non-dominant hand. Would you improve over time? Yeah, of course. Right? Would you be excited or encouraged about that? No, of course not. Because you're thinking, Neal, this is so stupid, right? If you just let me dedicate that time to practicing writing with my dominant hand, I'd have so much better results. It'd be the dumbest thing ever to go work in this area where I don't have this natural talent. It even feels awkward to hold it in my left hand. Now, I'm going to assume with 80 people on this call that some of you are left-handed. Maybe 5 or 6 of you are left-handed. I don't know why, but I'm pretty sure that if we compared your first attempt to the rest of our first attempts, if we were all in a room together, that we would see a similar quality and quantity, even though we got there in totally opposite ways, right? I don't know if it's nature. I don't know if it like we're born that way. Maybe when you were a kid, you picked up a pen and whoever was helping you learn to write said, no, the other hand. Could be random. Whatever the reason, you have a natural talent, a natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving when it comes to writing. And this better developmental approach would not be like conventional personal or professional development says, let's identify an improvement area. Hey, you suck at writing with your left hand, and let's give you a development plan. And it assumes that most, if not all, behaviors can be learned, that the best in a given role get there with the same behaviors, and that fixing weaknesses leads to success. But that's not true. What the research proves is that a strengths-based approach says if we identify your talent and we build it into a strength, that while we can always learn skills and knowledge, only some behaviors can be learned. And the best in a given role deliver the same outcomes using very different behaviors. And that fixing weaknesses might prevent catastrophic failure, but building on strengths leads to success. I'll give you a quick example. I am your very stereotypic sales guy. I'm highly competitive. I love my lists. I'm very driven. And when I was in sales, which I was for many years, I was very much focused on providing my clients with the best possible solution. I am not a relationship person. I famously had $0 given for client entertainment ever. I would not ever go to a bar. The only time I would ever buy a client anything is if I happen to be at a trade show at the same time as them, at the bar at the same time as them, I would pick up their tab. Otherwise, I did not care for my clients. I don't think they liked me outside of the value I provided. I had amazing ideas. I took care of their issues very quickly, and that's why I was successful in sales. I worked with a guy named Rob. Rob struggled to have an intelligent conversation about the solutions that we provided, but Rob was a hyper relational person. Rob would know everything about a client. We had one client who worked remotely. Rob worked remotely. The two of them would talk every single day for 30 to 45 minutes to start their day. We did snow removal, so we would have meetings before snowstorms, and we would get on a call. And Rob would talk about the fact that it's this portfolio maybe doesn't need quite as much attention because we're not going to be micromanaged right now because Cindy's off today. Her dog is having surgery. It's pancreatic cancer. The second surgery, we're really hoping we get it. They've had the dog for 12 years. It's so important to her kids. He knew all their kids' names. And I was just like, how do you know all this? And like, why do I have to hear it right now? But that's what Rob did, and his clients loved him. We had equal success in sales in vastly different ways. The best in a given role get the same outcomes using different behaviors. And that's the power of a strengths-based approach. People might excel in sales or customer service or any role because they have lots of creative ideas, because they form meaningful relationships, because they set goals and timelines, because they study the past to learn what works best, because they research people or prospects before approaching them, because they find complex opportunities where learning is required, because they can advocate for customer equality and fulfillment, or because they can demonstrate reliability, or any of dozens of others of behaviors. When we're coaching, we need to figure out what someone's strengths are and then build on them, rather than assuming the way that we had success is the only way to have success. These are the 34 categories or strengths or talent themes that can be built upon. If you'd like to take the assessment, I'd be happy to help you. You'll get a report. It's amazing. It's just this wonderful way to help articulate what somebody's talent is, that natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving, and then to go build an investment on it through practicing, coaching, and developing it into a strength, that ability to provide consistent, near perfect performance. But even if you never take the assessment, as a coach, here's what you can ask people. Here's what you can talk through. Here's the clues to talent. What activities do you do where you find yearning? You're attracted or pulled towards this activity. And what activities or talents or behaviors do you do when you're experiencing rapid learning? I was with my friends recently at their house for dinner. I was having a fascinating conversation with my friend David. He's 6 years old. And David's in first grade. And I was asking him about school. I said, David, what's your favorite subject or your favorite part of school? He said, math. I said, David, why is math your favorite? And he says, because it's fun and I'm good at it. And I was like, David should be speaking to all my managers instead of me, right? We're wired to learn and we find success in ways that are unique to our DNA to understand. What activities do we do where we enter flow state when all the pieces seem to flow together and total performance follows really easily and time kind of disappears? Where have you had glimpses of excellence? If you tell me all the things that you're most proud of with life, whether it's in a relationship or in school or in business, and we can kind of piece together these moments of success, I'll bet we can find consistent behaviors that you would credit for that. And then finally, satisfaction, that thing you get to do, that enjoyment where it's actually fun. We're like, man, if I could just do this one thing every day, I'd be so happy. And that doesn't mean that our role can only be one specific strength, but we can follow those clues to find talents. This is the type of report that you'd get. I already told you I'm an achiever. I'm competitive. I take control. I have command. One thing that's really interesting, if you take the assessment as opposed to just kind of trying to pick which group, is that these are individualized. If you took Clifton Strengths or you have, and you got achiever, you will have a different description of achiever than I will. And that's because we're more than just these words. They play off each other. So my achiever plus significance looks different than someone who's achiever plus includer, for instance. And I don't have time. I'm also not trying to sell you on this, just letting you know that tools like this exist to assist you in coaching. So, one thing that I'm always asking people in coaching conversations are, what are your superpowers? These are coaching questions that I would write down to help get your people to higher performance. What do you do best? Maybe you feel emboldened enough to just drop something in the chat. What's one thing that we talked about that you feel like is descriptive of the thing that you do best at work or in life? How do you use them for success at work, in relationships, and to achieve goals? My job as a coach is to help you do that every day more in your role to further your own success and the company's success. When's the time you are at your best? What's the best thing about you? What brings you joy? What's the thing you do enjoy most? What was your most fulfilling experience? What are you most proud of? What's the best job or project I ever worked on? All questions, all positive, strategic, encouraging. People love to talk about themselves this way. Maybe they're not used to it. Maybe we have to ease them into it. I also, oh, sorry, that was a private message. The private message I got was being direct, but not always a good thing. I won't say from who. I also am that. I'm missing the inside joke about being mistaken, but that's great, right? Or the thing that you believe you contribute to others. So, what about weakness? We don't ignore them, we manage around them. They can come from the bottom of the list or talents we don't have. But I think interestingly, they can come from the top too, right? So while my competition and achievement made me great at my job, that also made me the worst teammate. Because anytime I viewed someone as being in the way between what I thought was most important for the client, I would just steamroll them. And we can use our other talents to find success despite our weakness. All right, we're going to move on to the sixth shift though. We have to stop thinking about people in their job and start thinking about their whole life. So everyone in the world wants a good job. Young workers more than anyone else are asking, does the organization value my strength and contribution? And a job is no longer just a job. It is our whole life. So this is Howard Schultz. You know him as the former CEO of Starbucks. Starbucks entered the Chinese market in 1999. And like most Western brands, they really struggled for the first while. Very rare for a Western world brand to find success in the Chinese market. And through their failures, Starbucks started to figure out the critical role that parents played in the lives of their workers in China. And so they hosted in 2012 for the first time something called a partner family forum. This is like if you invested in stock of a company, they have stockholder calls or shareholder calls, right? And you get to hear everything the company's doing. But instead of doing it for their shareholders, Starbucks invited all the parents of all their workers in to hear about the company. And through that, what evolved was Starbucks realized that they would do better if they offered health insurance for their parents starting in 2017. So anybody who works at Starbucks now gets health insurance for their parents. I'm not advocating that we do this. This is not the economy or societal norms in which we live. But Starbucks found that parents in China were often concerned about their children working for a Western retailer, particularly one that did not take care of the family. And so Starbucks said, we're going to change that. And the conversation went from, why would you go work here when you could get a real job, which is maybe a statement being made to your employees from their families when you're trying to recruit them, to, wow, what an amazing thing you're doing for the whole family working for Starbucks, who's going to provide for all of us. So when 75% of young workers are using family and friends' opinions when choosing a job, my question for you is, how are you selling working in the green industry and for your company to them? We need to do better. It can be as simple as a single page, a one piece of paper that you hand out to every recruit or interviewee that talks about the fact that you can actually make a very good living in this industry. That even though we don't have formal licensure and apprenticeship like some of the other trades, this is a worthwhile industry to work in. In fact, it's one of the most important if you care about, say, the planet, the environment, and people's health outcomes who inhabit the natural environment. You do have it in Canada. I appreciate that, right? Even your frontline workers, your retailer workers should have that same pride, that same seriousness, so that they can take it home and prove to their parents this isn't just a college kid job. This isn't a part-time job. LinkedIn, pre-pandemic, used to have bringing your parents to work day. I'm told, I've heard that you used to have bringing your daughter to work day, like way back when. Older people on the call can maybe attest to. This is bringing your parents to work day so that they can see what you do and try and understand it a little bit, understand the importance of it. Really, it's about getting back to this elements of well-being, talking about the whole life, right? So what are your people's goals? If you consider the 3 most important direct reports that you have or close coworkers that you work with, and you write down their names, can you write down 3 personal goals for each of them that have nothing to do with work? Well, they want to buy a house, they want to get married, they want to have kids, they want to put those kids through college, they want to save for retirement, they want to take more vacation, they want to get have a bigger vacation or a better vacation. Can we write down their goals, and then can we help them achieve those goals through their job? I got asked the question recently, Neal, how do you motivate salespeople? I cannot. In fact, nobody can. You can't motivate somebody. All you can do is ask them really good questions to figure out what they're motivated about in life, and then tie together their on-the-job performance with what they're motivated by. It requires going deeper than just their role. Now, what can we provide if somebody's struggling in those other areas? We can provide financial coaching, not directly by calling a credit union or a financial coach. We can encourage people to bring in lunch together so that they're eating healthier and saving money. We can do workout classes together, even if it's just a stretch and flex before work. We can have a company chaplain. It's not that weird. The military does it. I know of plenty of green industry companies who pay a lot of money to bring a company chaplain in once a week for people to talk about whatever they want to talk about directly, confidentially, because they care about them as a person. You can participate in charities, or you can offer workplace flexibility, which is the number 1 requested perk or benefit in the workplace, or help them with personal goal setting. All things we can do, for the most part, things that should cost very little, if not no money, simply by providing them with resources or pointing them in the right direction and encouraging them to better their lives in a way that's meaningful, whether they work for us or not. All right, so we're going to close the last 15 minutes with high performance coaching, unless you guys start bombarding me with questions, which is fine too. So performance management, it has lots of distinct definitions, but for me, it's just a process to achieve shared understanding. A process to achieve shared understanding is what performance management boils down to. And I already talked about why rating scales like 1 to 5 don't provide enough detail. But I think day to day, employees just don't know what they need to do next. And we need to give them more guidance on action steps and avoid the defensiveness that is what typical accountability conversations try and have. So this is the model for coaching I want to share with you. Model for coaching has 3 phases, and it's kind of circular. It never really ends. We want to establish expectations. We want to continually coach, and we want to create accountability. So for establishing expectations, number 1, just start with an accurate job description. My advice is to take whatever's been iterated on or posted up on the job posting and throw it away. My apologies to legal and HR, but it's probably wrong. Let's just go interview all of our people, ask them what they're doing daily, weekly, and monthly, and then start from scratch and rewrite it. We can do that before the weekend if we cared to. Only 41% of employees strongly agree that their job description aligns well with the work that they do. That's a problem. Number 2, let's have goals that are mutually agreed upon. Not we assign goals to people, not we ask them for their goals. We sit down and we mutually agree upon a goal which seems reasonable for them, motivational for them, and aligned to our company outcomes that we want. And number three, connect their role to the bigger picture. Let's talk about how when they do their job, it impacts their team, it impacts the mission and purpose, and it impacts the customer. And that way, we have expectations that are clear, collaborative, and aligned. Clear, collaborative, and aligned. Number two, coaching. Let's meet at minimum once per week. Doesn't have to be all that long. Doesn't have to be documented. Doesn't have to necessarily be formal, but meeting frequently. Now, while it doesn't have to be formal, it should be very intentional and clear in purpose and outcome. We're not getting together for coffee every morning and calling it coaching when we're not intentional about what we're doing, right? We could involve coffee. It could be every morning, but we're going to be very intentional and clear in the purpose and the outcome, which is job performance, goal tracking, and accountability. And anytime we're talking about something, it's always in a learning and proactive planning way. Learning and proactive planning. So that way it's frequent, it's focused, and it's future oriented. We're not going to confront them about mistakes. We're going to ask them what they are learning from and how they're going to apply it in the future. And then we're going to create accountability. So accountability should be going up, not down when we get more human, right? We're going to celebrate success and understanding. This can be fun, right? Anytime we get aligned, anytime we have success, we're going to celebrate them. Yeah, we're not going to confront them about mistakes. Smiley face. That's not a question. I like it. Okay, me too. I'll stay tuned to see if we elaborate on that. We're going to use, rather than confronting them about mistakes, we will use metrics, observations, and goals. Metrics, observations, and goals. And we're going to help them identify and gain employment. That way, it's achievement oriented, it's fair and accurate, and it's developmental in nature. So let's talk about the metrics, observations, and goals that we're going to use. Number one, we will use quantitative metrics. We will use quantitative metrics so long as they're largely within the employee's control and they reflect key meaningful outcomes. This could be productivity, profitability, accuracy, efficiency. Could be orders fulfilled, could be orders delivered on time, could be sales, could be attendance, could be lots of things. In the realm of sales and sales coaching, we have dozens of them. Key is within employees' control. Now, we're not going to stop there. We're also going to use subjective observations that qualitatively put performance in the context of managerial feedback to contextualize it. So why is this important? Because if you only rely on metrics like we used to at the Snow Company, then what you do is you reward someone like me who sells a lot, generates a lot of economic value, but is a terrible teammate. What my boss should have done is said, Neal, rather than getting a raise, you're going to stay at the same, because even though you contributed lots of sales, you do not demonstrate the core values of teamwork and valuing other people that we need to see here. So we need both metrics and observations. This way, you don't promote toxic employees just because they figured out how to be efficient, right? And then we're going to use individualized goals. And these take into account each person's expertise, experience, and unique job responsibilities along the general responsibilities of the job. One of the byproducts of a more diverse workplace has been more diverse education and experiential backgrounds. And as a result, we can't expect all of our employees to have the same plant knowledge. Can't expect them all to have the same understanding or expectations around communication or attendance. And we have to contextualize their performance to that to develop that. So that's our model for coaching. Anne just mentioned in the chat that we're going to, oh yeah, she would love your feedback. Also, we will get you the slides and some handouts for this. But here's your action plan. Nothing else. Here's the things to write down. One, start having a weekly one-on-one with your direct reports. If you're a functional workplace, you have 5 to 15 direct reports. If you have more than that, it's time to delegate other managers. But 5 to 15 people is typical for a manager. Have weekly one-on-ones with each of them. 2, keep those one-on-ones employee focused. Make it all about them. 3, connect it to purpose about why your company exists and the good that you do for the planet and for the people that you serve, and offer as much support and celebration as possible. If you do that and you agree to push past the awkward first time, then you'll be much better. Do I have time tips on keeping things consistent when things get busy? Yes. Here's my position on this. So when I was in sales, if I was not actively selling about 85% of the time, then I would get chewed out by my boss, and rightfully so. When I went to university, I had a choice of what to get my degree in. And one of those choices was something called management. I did not want to do that. I got my degree in marketing, but management was a whole separate thing, and it's a real job. And so when I talk with managers and they tell me that they can only spend 5 to 10% of their time with their people who they are managing, they have an organizational problem. This is a societal misunderstanding of work, in my opinion. So it's not your fault. But to take someone who's performing in a role and say, wow, you're doing really great. We're going to put you in charge of other people. Keep doing everything you're doing and have these people report to you with their problems. But really, you're going to get yelled at if you don't marginalize them in your schedule at the expense of everything else you have to do. That's a recipe for disaster, right? So management's a real job. This is what HR should reclaim, and partner with frontline managers to go accomplish, is this element of coaching. And you may have to sit down and figure out, hey, what can I be doing? What can I shed off my plate that's not my people to stay consistent with this? The hour a week that I spend with people is the most important hour for me and them. It's the only way that the company succeeds and they succeed in their role. So it's just non-negotiable. And I think the reason why it gets pushed to the side, particularly when we're busy, is because we forget that, right? But you can't show me a single task that any single person is doing that's more important uh, at a given minute than, or on a given week, than that 1 hour, right? Sure, we can adjust the time to make it fit the schedule. All right. Last thing I want to give you, my 10 favorite coaching questions. Coaching's really hard. It's going to be hyper awkward the first time you do it. Employees may not trust you. I understand that. A couple of guidelines, my FAQ about my FAQ, right? Frequently asked questions about my favorite questions. No, you don't ask these by reading them verbatim. No, you don't rip them off all at once. No, you don't read the same question to the same person every week in a row. These are tools to use. You have to kind of pick and choose when you revisit them. They do change. I love to start, of all the things you do well, what do you do best? It's so flattering. It's so complimentary. Even for your employees who are marginal, they can relate to this question. 2, when do you take the most pride in your work? I told you I can't really motivate anybody, but I can figure out what they're all about and encourage them to do it more. This cuts right to the core of that. 3, what should I know about working with you? This, like all the questions here, are open-ended. You don't really know what you're going to get, but it can be really interesting in a lot of ways. What tools do they need? What support do they need? How do they view themselves? 4, how can I help you use your strengths more in your role? Again, even if they've never taken the assessment, even if they're struggling to articulate with what their strengths are, this kicks off that conversation around, you do something really well. Maybe we're not quite sure what it is yet, but we want to do more of it. 5, are there activities or part of your role you want to do more? We see that passion and competence tend to go hand in hand. 6, when you succeed, how do you like to receive recognition? This way, all the effort and time and money and energy I put towards recognizing people I know can resonate for them, because that's the whole point of it. 7, what do you want to be known for? And 8, what is something that you're most proud of that wouldn't be on your resume? If you ask these 2 questions of somebody, you will get to know them immediately in a new way. I was with the board of directors for American Hort for a couple of days back in October. There were two guys sitting at a table, and I made them all practice these questions with each other. And one of the guys said, I've known this guy for 20 years, and I feel like I've never known him my entire life because of the depth of information I just got from these two questions. You want to cut to the core of what someone's all about? These are amazing. And shortly thereafter, what's a dream you have for your life that maybe you haven't shared much or haven't shared with many people? What a beautiful way to figure out who someone really is. And then 10, I conclude every coaching. This is the one I do every week. Every coaching conversation. How can I support you better? Because my job is to enable you. All right. We are past goal setting, but I'm going to say, why improve here? Well, look, I believe over the next 30 years, the world's going to be led with economic force. I think we've all been faced with this reality where tariff seems to be the most important word that we're dealing with. It seems like economics is kind of the big deal for countries right now, right? And I think more than military might, more than historical geopolitical importance, economics is going to be what really dictates who wins and loses. And this isn't a new slide for me, by the way. What I know from Gallup polls, which is in every country in the world, is that everyone in the world wants a good job. And I think that jobs are the hearts and souls of a nation. They sustain us all, but we don't really consider where or how good jobs are created. And I think we could do a lot better with that. And I really believe that we can change the world. I firmly believe that investing time with you here today will help make the world better, even for individual employees. I think that if all of your employees are more engaged, your business will start to thrive. I believe that what you do is important to the communities in which you live and work. And I think that if your company thrives, you'll start to employ more people. You'll be a positive net economic force. You'll start to improve your community in ways that maybe you can't imagine. All together, your province, the country, Canada, and the whole world will improve through this. And that's why I'm dedicating my life to helping people in business do this. And if you want to help me change the world, I've got two ways for you to do it. If you liked anything I shared, if you think it'll help you be more successful this string, and you want to help improve the world with me, the number one and most important thing you can do is just go build a great workplace. You're about to employ a bunch of people, maybe for the first time in a while, and you can make this season dramatically better than it has been in the past. And that would be massive, that we can all change the world together. And if you want to do more, you can refer me to speak. The only reason I'm here is because Ann saw me at Cultivate. The only reason she saw me at Cultivate is because somebody referred me there. And it helps my business and helps me help a bunch of other people improve as well. So if you know of an individual company, a trade show, association, chamber of commerce, trade school, or really any group of people that would benefit from a message like this, a quick email introducing me to them would allow me to continue to do this for a living and help us all change the world together. And I'd be deeply grateful for that. But most importantly, keep in touch. I'm happy to take your questions here. I'll stick along as long as you guys want. Also happy to take your questions via email. That is my cell phone. You're more than welcome to call me or text me at your convenience. If you'd like to see a little bit more about what I do, you can go to my website. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Hard to believe I am actively planning my 5 days at Cultivate. So if you'll be there and you want to meet up, let me know. I'm doing group dinners and breakfasts and lunches, and would love to connect with you in person as well. So thank you for spending time with me today. I know that this is a particularly busy season for those of you where it's not actively snowing, and maybe where it is. I will stay on this Zoom for as long as you want, answering any questions that you drop through the chat or Q&A. If it's time for you to go, thanks so much. Love to connect with you virtually or in person down the line.